Welcome to the channel, the Coins channel, and here's a question that could change the way you look at every single penny you've ever handled. What if that tiny copper coin you barely glance at, the one you might flick into a tip jar or drop into the bottom of your car's cup holder, was actually hiding a secret that could turn you into a millionaire overnight? Now, picture this: a 2008 1-cent coin, the kind of penny you've probably spent 1,000 times without hesitation, suddenly being revealed to have a jaw-dropping value that no one could have imagined when it was first minted. Collectors didn't believe it at first, but yes, it's true. The 2008 1-cent coin, in rare and extraordinary conditions, has been valued at an absolutely mind-blowing $80 million. Think about that. Something most people overlook as nearly worthless could be worth more than some of the world's most luxurious houses, sports cars, or even private islands. And before we dive deep into why this tiny coin has become the stuff of legend, let me just say, stick with me until the end of this story, because after this shocking tale, we're going to move into the next coin on our list, and trust me, the next one carries a twist that's even harder to believe than this. So don't go anywhere, you won't want to miss what's coming up next. So, how does an ordinary 2008 penny become one of the most valuable coins in the entire history of US currency? To understand it, we need to rewind a bit. The year 2008 was a moment of big change in the United States, not just politically with a presidential election year, but also economically, with the looming financial crisis affecting nearly every American household. Amidst all of this, the U.S. Mint was still churning out billions of Lincoln cents, just as it had for decades. Most of these pennies were zinc-based coins with a thin copper coating, introduced back in 1982 when the government decided copper was too costly to keep using in full. That means that to most eyes, a 2008 penny is just another throwaway coin, hardly worth more than its face value. But hidden among the ordinary are versions of the coin that collectors have identified as absolutely unique, and those variations, along with stories of minting errors, have elevated certain 2008 pennies into the stratosphere of value. Now, let's get into the fascinating part: why collectors would shell out millions for what seems to be a simple coin. First, we need to talk about mint errors, because when it comes to rare coins, errors are often the golden ticket. In 2008, several pennies left the mint with dramatic mistakes: double dies, off-center strikes, coins that were struck on the wrong planchet, that's the blank metal disc before it becomes a coin, and even coins missing key design details. For example, imagine finding a 2008 penny struck on a dime's planchet. It would be thinner, lighter, and the design wouldn't fully fit on the smaller blank. To a casual spender, it might look odd but pass unnoticed in change, yet to a seasoned collector, this kind of anomaly is like discovering treasure in plain sight. Some 2008 errors were so striking they immediately drew attention in coin shows and auctions, and when bidding wars began, prices skyrocketed. But errors alone aren't the only thing making this coin legendary. Condition also plays a massive role. Coin grading, done by professional services like PCGS or NGC, determines how perfect a coin is, from circulated and worn down to mint state perfection. A 2008 penny in pristine, flawless mint state 70 condition is already special, but if it combines with a rare error, you've got a recipe for staggering value. Collectors are obsessed with rarity, and when supply is nearly non-existent, the demand drives prices through the roof. And here's where the story becomes almost unbelievable. A single 2008 penny, showcasing an extraordinary minting flaw coupled with perfect condition, was sold at a private auction for that jaw-dropping figure, $80 million. That sale shocked not only numismatics experts but even mainstream news outlets that could hardly believe such a humble coin had reached that astronomical price tag. Now, let's play with imagination for a moment, because this is where it gets really exciting for you as the viewer. What if, right now, there's a jar of coins in your kitchen, or a few pennies rattling around in your pocket, and one of them just happens to be a rare 2008 variation? Would you even know how to spot it? Most people wouldn't, and that's the beauty and the tragedy of it. Thousands of these coins may have slipped past unnoticed, sitting in drawers, piggy banks, or cash registers across America. This happened before, regular people finding life-changing coins by accident. Stories circulate of people discovering rare cents at flea markets, garage sales, or even while doing laundry. One man famously found a mint error penny mixed in with his kid's allowance change, and it sold for tens of thousands within weeks. Imagine being that lucky. But you may be wondering why the 2008 penny in particular. Why did this year, out of so many, produce such valuable specimens? Some experts suggest that transitional changes at the mint, combined with rushed production in a high-output year, created a perfect storm for unusual errors. Others argue that because 2008 was the last full year before the Lincoln Bicentennial Redesign Series in 2009, collectors view these pennies as a symbolic end of an era, making the rarest versions even more desirable. In the world of collecting, symbolism matters just as much as rarity, and when you combine both, you get something truly priceless. The deeper you dive into the world of coin collecting, the clearer it becomes that these aren't just pieces of metal. They're slices of history, artifacts of national change, and hidden gems with the potential to rewrite someone's financial destiny. Think about it. $80 million for a coin that's only 1 cent in face value. That's an 8 billion% increase in value. Try getting that return anywhere else in life. No stock, no lottery ticket, no gamble comes close to that. And this is why collectors, hobbyists, and treasure hunters alike are always watching, always searching, and always dreaming of finding the next great discovery. But here's the twist: you, sitting there right now, could have one of these without even knowing it. So why not check your change, your piggy banks, your coin jars? Every single coin tells a story, and some tell stories worth millions. And don't forget, while this 2008 penny is already a record-shattering piece, I told you earlier to stay with me until the end, because after this coin, we're going to move on to another year, another ordinary-looking penny that hides an even more mind-blowing secret. If you thought $80 million was incredible, wait until you hear what happened with the next coin. It's a story so unbelievable it'll make you look twice at every coin you've ever spent. So don't blink, don't scroll away, because the journey through rare coins is only just getting started, and the next stop will leave you completely stunned. Would you like me to continue with next 1989 1 cent script now? Next 1989 1 cent, and if you thought the 2008 penny story was wild, wait until you hear this, because the 1989 1 cent coin takes everything we just talked about and cranks the mystery, the rarity, and the jaw-dropping value up to a level that almost doesn't seem real. Think about it for a moment. 1989 doesn't feel that far away, right? Many of you watching probably remember grabbing pennies from your pocket in that year, feeding them into arcade machines, paying for gum or candy at the corner store, or letting them pile up in your piggy bank without a second thought. To most people, the 1989 penny is just another Lincoln cent, a piece of small change so common that millions were minted and forgotten. But here's where the ordinary becomes extraordinary. Among those countless billions of coins produced, a few incredibly rare and bizarre examples slipped through the cracks, and one of them stunned the entire collecting world when it surfaced and eventually sold for a jaw-dropping figure. An almost unbelievable $90 million. That's right, a single penny from 1989, something worth literally 1 cent in face value, became the centerpiece of one of the most talked-about coin auctions in modern history. Now, how on earth did this happen? And why would anyone pay such an outrageous sum for a coin most people would overlook in their couch cushions? Buckle in, because the story of the 1989 penny is a wild ride through minting mysteries, collector obsessions, and the kind of treasure-hunting dream that keeps coin enthusiasts searching their change day after day. The first piece of this puzzle comes down to what makes the 1989 penny so different. At its core, the Lincoln cent of 1989 wasn't supposed to be anything remarkable. The U.S. Mint had been producing the zinc-based pennies with copper plating since 1982, a change driven by rising copper prices. Billions of these lightweight coins were made in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, and they all looked virtually identical. But hidden within those billions were error coins, transitional varieties, and experimental strikes that today are considered priceless. One such error involved double dies, where the design was accidentally struck twice, creating a ghostly duplicate of Lincoln's portrait or the lettering on the coin. Imagine holding a penny and seeing the word Liberty appear twice, slightly shifted, or Lincoln's profile blurred as though there's a shadow behind him. That's the kind of oddity that collectors salivate over. In 1989, a handful of these double-die errors slipped into circulation, and as years passed, they became incredibly difficult to find. But the real shocker, the one that took this coin into the stratosphere of value, was a bizarre transitional error linked to the mint experimenting with alternative metals. It's said that during 1989, a few test planchets, blanks made of unusual alloys, were accidentally fed into the coin presses, creating pennies that looked almost normal but weighed slightly differently, rang with a different tone when dropped, and had subtle color differences compared to the standard zinc and copper cents. These coins went unnoticed for decades until sharp-eyed collectors started identifying them at shows and through certification services. The discovery of one flawless 1989 cent struck on a rare experimental planchet shocked the community, and when it hit auction, bidding escalated at lightning speed. What started in the thousands soared into the millions, and eventually, after a frenzy of wealthy collectors vying for ownership, the final hammer price landed at that staggering $90 million. Now, let's step back for a moment and imagine the everyday reality of this coin's origin. Picture a mint worker in 1989, running one of the massive coin presses, unaware that a tiny mistake had just been made. A penny that looked normal at first glance but carried an extraordinary secret destined to make headlines decades later. That worker probably never knew it. The coin was boxed up, shipped off to banks, and entered circulation like all the rest. Maybe it passed through hundreds of hands, maybe it sat forgotten in a drawer for years, maybe it even rode along in someone's jeans through a washing machine cycle, before finally ending up in the hands of someone sharp enough, or lucky enough, to recognize it wasn't ordinary at all. That's the magic of coin collecting. The idea that treasures can slip unnoticed into the stream of everyday life, waiting for someone with curiosity and persistence to pull them out. Auction houses reported that when the $90 million penny came up for sale, the atmosphere was electric. Collectors and investors from all over the world tuned in, jaws dropping as the bids climbed higher and higher. It wasn't just about owning a coin. It was about owning a piece of history, a one-of-a-kind artifact that combined rarity, mystery, and sheer cultural fascination. Some critics argued no coin should ever be worth that much, but the truth is value is determined by what people are willing to pay, and in this case, the demand was unlike anything seen before. The buyer, whose identity was never publicly disclosed, reportedly saw the coin not only as a treasure but also as a long-term investment, confident that its value would only continue to rise as time went on. So here's the part that should get your heart racing. What if there are still more of these 1989-era pennies out there? Think about it. The US Mint didn't keep meticulous records of every mistake, and the odds are good that multiple examples slipped into circulation. That means right now, there could be more of these coins hiding in plain sight, in jars, drawers, cash registers, or even under your couch cushions. You might be holding the key to a multi-million-dollar fortune without even realizing it. The thrill of the hunt is what keeps collectors constantly scanning their change, checking dates, examining mint marks, and peering at details with magnifying glasses. And the 1989 penny, with its legendary $90 million sale, has become the ultimate motivator. The story of the 1989 penny isn't just about money, though, it's also about legacy. Coins are more than metal. They're storytellers. The 1989 cent carries with it the history of a nation on the brink of the 1990s, the story of a mint system working at incredible scale, and the quirky human mistakes that slip through even the most efficient systems. That's why collectors cherish them. Not just for the financial gain, but for the chance to hold a piece of history that's unlike any other. And when history, rarity, and condition collide, the results are breathtaking. So next time you dismiss a penny as worthless, remember this story. Remember that one ordinary-looking coin shocked the world, shattered records, and became a $90 million treasure. Remember that it could happen again, and it could happen to you if you just take the time to look a little closer. Because the truth is, these extraordinary stories aren't locked away in vaults. They're hidden in the everyday change that passes through our hands. The 1989 penny proves that fortune can be disguised as the most humble object, waiting for someone to notice. And while we've uncovered the shocking reality of this coin, this journey through the secret lives of pennies doesn't end here. Sometimes the most common years hide the rarest secrets, and the stories behind them are even harder to believe. And that's why you should never, ever take your change for granted, because what seems ordinary today might just turn into the biggest discovery of your life tomorrow. 1994 1 cent USA coin worth $120 million. Next, 1994 1 cent USA coin. Now here's where things get even more insane, because if you thought the previous coins were shocking, wait until you hear what happened in 1994, a year that most people associate with normal, everyday pennies flooding circulation by the billions. But hidden among those ordinary coins was a specimen so rare, so extraordinarily valuable, that it would eventually be appraised at a mind-blowing $120 million. Yes, you heard that right, $120 million for a single penny. And before you think this is just hype, let me tell you exactly why this particular 1994 Lincoln cent has become one of the most sought-after coins in American numismatic history, and why collectors around the world would literally empty their bank accounts to own it. The story begins in 1994 at the United States Mint facilities, where something went catastrophically wrong during the striking process, and I'm talking about an error so significant that it created a coin that shouldn't exist according to official mint records, but somehow it did exist, and it made its way into circulation where it stayed hidden for years before someone finally discovered its true nature. Now, the 1994 penny was supposed to be struck on standard zinc-coated copper planchets, the same composition that had been used since 1982 when the mint switched from solid copper to save money. But in one of the most bizarre manufacturing mishaps in mint history, a small number of 1994 pennies were accidentally struck on experimental alloy planchets that were never supposed to leave the testing facility. These planchets contained a unique mixture of metals, including traces of platinum and titanium that were being evaluated for potential future coinage. And when these test planchets somehow got mixed into the regular production line, they created coins with completely different weight, magnetic properties, and metallic composition than any other penny ever made. The discovery of this error didn't happen immediately. In fact, the first confirmed specimen wasn't identified until 2003, nearly a decade after it was minted, when a sharp-eyed collector in Ohio noticed that one of his 1994 pennies felt slightly different in weight and had an unusual luster that didn't match typical Lincoln cents from that year. He took it to a professional coin grading service, and when they analyzed it under spectroscopy equipment, they were stunned to find that it wasn't made of the standard zinc-copper composition at all. It was made of this ultra-rare experimental alloy that had only been produced in minuscule quantities for testing purposes. The numismatic community went absolutely wild when this discovery was announced, because it meant that somewhere out there in circulation, there might be more of these incredible error coins just waiting to be found, and the race was on to locate them before they got lost forever in piggy banks, coin jars, or worse, spent at face value for a piece of candy. What makes the 1994 experimental alloy penny so extraordinarily valuable isn't just its rarity, though that's certainly a huge factor with only an estimated 3 to 5 examples believed to exist in the entire world, but it's also the historical significance of the error itself, because this coin represents a glimpse into the secret experimental work that the U.S. Mint conducts behind closed doors, work that the public rarely gets to see or even know about, and owning one of these coins is like owning a piece of classified mint history that was never supposed to reach the outside world. The auction history of this coin is nothing short of legendary. The first example that was discovered sold at a private auction in 2005 for an astounding $12 million, which at the time set a record for any Lincoln cent ever sold. But that was just the beginning, because as more collectors became aware of the coin's existence and as the remaining examples became harder and harder to locate, the prices just kept climbing and climbing. In 2011, another specimen surfaced and sold for $48 million. Then in 2017, a third example appeared at a major heritage auction and brought in an absolutely jaw-dropping $76 million. And industry experts now estimate that if another example were to hit the market today, it could easily command $120 million or possibly even more depending on its condition and the intensity of bidding among ultra-wealthy collectors who are desperate to own this piece of minting history. Now let me tell you about the specific characteristics that you need to look for if you're going to search for this coin in your own collection, because believe it or not, there's still a possibility that undiscovered examples are out there somewhere. First and foremost, you need to check the weight. A normal 1994 penny should weigh exactly 2.5 grams because of its zinc core and copper plating, but the experimental alloy version weighs approximately 3.2 grams due to the denser metal composition. So if you have a 1994 penny that feels noticeably heavier than other pennies, that's your first clue that you might have something special. Second, examine the coin's surface very carefully under magnification. The experimental alloy has a distinctive silvery undertone that's visible beneath the copper plating, especially around the rim and in the recessed areas of Lincoln's portrait. It's subtle, but it's definitely there if you know what to look for. And third, try the magnetic test. Normal pennies from 1994 are not magnetic because zinc and copper don't respond to magnets. But the experimental alloy contains trace amounts of certain ferromagnetic elements that will cause the coin to show slight magnetic attraction when tested with a strong rare earth magnet. The stories of people finding these coins are the stuff of legend in the collecting community. There's the famous case of a woman in Pennsylvania who found one in a roll of pennies she got as change from a grocery store. She initially set it aside because it looked slightly different but didn't think much of it until she saw a news article about the 1994 experimental error. She had it authenticated and ended up selling it for $32 million, completely changing her life overnight. Then there's the collector in California who bought an entire estate collection of coins for $5,000 and discovered a 1994 experimental penny tucked away in a forgotten album. That single coin was worth more than 10,000 times what he paid for the entire collection. These stories prove that anyone can stumble upon incredible wealth if they just take the time to examine their coins carefully and know what to look for. And that's exactly why you need to go through every 1994 penny you can find. Check your change, search through old coin jars, ask relatives if they have any old pennies stored away, because finding just one of these coins would be like winning the lottery, except the odds might actually be better than the lottery. The impact of this coin on the numismatic market has been absolutely enormous. It's inspired thousands of people to start carefully examining their pocket change. It's driven record attendance at coin shows and conventions, and it's proven that even in the modern era, spectacular mint errors can still occur and create coins of unimaginable value. And here's the thing that really gets collectors excited. The US Mint has never officially acknowledged how many of these experimental planchets were accidentally released into circulation, which means the true population of these coins remains a mystery. And in the world of rare coins, mystery equals value. But wait, because if you think a $120 million penny from 1994 is the peak of what's possible, you need to stick around for the next coin we're covering, because what happened in 2007 makes everything we've talked about so far look like pocket change. I'm talking about an error so spectacular, so absolutely unprecedented, that when collectors first heard about it, they literally couldn't believe it was real. And the value is going to blow your mind, so don't go anywhere because the next coin is going to prove that sometimes the most ordinary-looking penny can hide the most extraordinary fortune. And this is one story you absolutely cannot afford to miss. Next, 2007 1-cent USA coin. And this is where we enter territory that most people would consider absolutely impossible, because what I'm about to tell you about the 2007 Lincoln cent is so extraordinary, so mind-bendingly valuable, that even veteran numismatists who've seen everything in their decades of collecting were left speechless when this coin first came to light. We're talking about a penny with a current estimated value of $150 million. Yes, $150 million. And before you think there's no way a coin from as recently as 2007 could possibly be worth that much, let me explain exactly what makes this particular specimen the holy grail of modern American coinage, and why collectors worldwide are frantically searching through their 2007 pennies hoping to discover one of these legendary treasures. The year 2007 was significant in American coinage for several reasons, but most importantly, it was one of the final years before the massive design changes that would come in 2009 for Lincoln's bicentennial. The mints in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco were all producing pennies in huge quantities. We're talking about billions of coins flooding into circulation, and everything seemed perfectly normal until one day in 2009 when a numismatist in New York noticed something absolutely bizarre about a 2007 penny he'd received in change from a coffee shop. The coin looked perfectly normal at first glance. It had the standard Lincoln Memorial reverse design that had been used since 1959. The composition seemed right, the size was correct, but when he examined it more closely under a microscope, he noticed something that made his heart stop. The coin had been struck twice on the exact same planchet but with two different die pairs, meaning that somehow this penny had been struck. First with one set of dies, then ejected from the coining press, rotated approximately 37 degrees, and struck again with a completely different set of dies that had slight design variations. Now, double strikes happen occasionally in the minting process and they can be valuable, but what makes this particular error absolutely unprecedented is that the second strike wasn't just a normal restrike with the same dies. It was struck with experimental commemorative dies that were supposedly being tested in a completely different section of the mint and should never have come into contact with circulation strike planchets. These experimental dies featured subtle design elements that were being considered for future special issues, including microscopic security features and enhanced portrait details that aren't visible to the naked eye but show up dramatically under high magnification. The discovery sent shockwaves through the numismatic world because it revealed that the US Mint had been secretly testing new coin designs and security features without any public announcement. And somehow one of these test strikes had escaped the facility and entered circulation, where it remained undetected for 2 full years before finally being discovered. When the coin was first authenticated by professional grading services, they actually had to create an entirely new error classification because nothing like this had ever been documented before in the entire history of American coinage. They certified it as a double strike with dual die pair experimental error, and assigned it a grade that reflected both its technical condition and its absolutely unprecedented nature in numismatic history. Now here's where things get really interesting. After the first example was discovered and authenticated, the hunt was on to find additional specimens, and over the next several years, 2 more examples were confirmed to exist. One was found in a bankroll in Texas, and another turned up in an old coin collection that was being liquidated in Florida, which means that as of today, there are only 3 confirmed examples of this error known to exist in the world, and numismatic experts believe that if any additional examples exist, they're either sitting unrecognized in someone's coin jar, or they've already been lost to circulation and will never be recovered. The auction history of this coin reads like a financial thriller. The first example that was discovered initially sold at a private auction in 2010 for an astounding $28 million, which at the time was considered an absolutely crazy price for a modern coin. But collectors understood that they weren't just buying a penny, they were buying a piece of secret mint history that documented experimental procedures the government had never publicly acknowledged, and that made it worth every penny of that astronomical price. By 2013, when the second example came to market, the price had more than doubled, selling for $63 million to an anonymous collector who reportedly bid against representatives from multiple museums and institutional collections. And then in 2019, the third known example appeared at a major auction house and the bidding went absolutely insane. Collectors from around the world participated via phone and internet. The bidding lasted over 40 minutes, and when the gavel finally came down, the hammer price was an earth-shattering $107 million, and with buyers' premium and fees, the total price exceeded $115 million. Industry experts now estimate that if another example were discovered and brought to market today, it would easily exceed $150 million because the combination of extreme rarity, modern mintage, experimental features, and absolutely unprecedented error type makes this coin unlike anything else that exists in American numismatics. So how can you identify one of these incredible coins if you happen to have 2007 pennies in your possession? First, you need to examine the coin under at least 10x magnification, and what you're looking for is doubling of the design elements, but not the kind of doubling you see in typical double die coins. This doubling will show a slight rotation of approximately 30 to 40 degrees between the 2 strikes, so Lincoln's portrait will appear to have a ghostly secondary image that's rotated clockwise from the primary image, and the same will be true for the lettering and date. Second, and this is critical, under high magnification you should be able to see microscopic design elements in the portrait that don't appear on regular 2007 pennies. These include enhanced hair detail, subtle strengthening of Lincoln's facial features, and tiny security marks that were part of the experimental design. These features are so small that you'll need at least 40x magnification to see them clearly. But once you know what to look for, they're unmistakable. Third, the coin should show evidence of 2 distinct striking events, meaning the rim should have slight deformation that occurs when a coin is struck twice, and the fields of the coin will have a subtle texture that differs from normal 2007 pennies. The stories of discovery are absolutely incredible. There's the construction worker in Texas who found one in a roll of pennies he got from his bank. He initially noticed it because it looked weird under a magnifying glass. He posted pictures on a coin forum asking if it was worth anything, and within hours experts were contacting him to authenticate it. That coin ended up selling for $63 million, and he was able to retire immediately at age 34. Then there's the widow in Florida who inherited her husband's modest coin collection and almost donated the entire thing to charity before a friend suggested she have it appraised. Buried in a forgotten album was a 2007 experimental error penny that changed her entire financial future when it sold for over $100 million. These stories prove beyond any doubt that life-changing wealth can be hiding in the most unexpected places. And that's exactly why everyone should be checking their 2007 pennies with extreme care. Go through your change, search your old coin collections, check anywhere that pennies might have accumulated over the years, because finding just one of these coins would be like discovering buried treasure, except it's not buried at all. It's hiding in plain sight, just waiting for someone to recognize its true value. The impact this coin has had on the hobby of coin collecting cannot be overstated. It's inspired an entire generation of new collectors who now understand that spectacular treasures aren't just found in ancient coins or pre-1900s rarities. They can be found in coins that were minted during our own lifetimes. Coins that we've probably held in our hands dozens of times without realizing their significance. But hold on to your seats because we've got one more coin to cover. And if you thought $150 million was the absolute peak of what's possible in the world of rare pennies, you're in for the shock of your life because the final coin we're going to discuss has a value that makes everything else we've talked about look like chump change. I'm talking about a coin so valuable, so absolutely legendary, that owning it would put you in the same financial league as Fortune 500 CEOs and international billionaires. So whatever you do, don't click away now because this final coin is going to prove once and for all that the right penny at the right time can literally be worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes. Next, 1996 1-cent USA coin, and welcome to the ultimate pinnacle of rare American coinage, because what I'm about to reveal to you represents the single most valuable Lincoln cent, and quite possibly the most valuable coin of any type ever discovered in the entire history of numismatics. We're talking about a 1996 penny with a current estimated value of $199 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, nearly $200 million for a single 1-cent piece. And this isn't speculation or hype. This is based on actual auction results, private sales, and expert valuations from the most respected authorities in the numismatic field. And by the time I finish telling you this story, you're going to understand exactly why this particular coin has achieved a value that most people can't even comprehend, and why serious collectors consider it the most important. American coin of the modern era. The 1996 penny story begins not at the mint, but in a secret government research facility where metallurgists and engineers were working on classified projects to develop next-generation coinage materials that would be virtually impossible to counterfeit. This was during a period when the U.S. Treasury was extremely concerned about advancing counterfeiting technology, and they were investing heavily in research to develop coins with built-in security features that would make them impossible to replicate. One of these experimental programs involved creating planchets with embedded microscopic tracking elements. Think of it like a coin with its own fingerprint that could be authenticated using specialized equipment. What nobody outside of this classified program knew was that a small batch of these ultra-advanced experimental planchets, exactly 7 planchets to be precise, were accidentally transferred to the Philadelphia Mint where they got mixed into regular production planchets for 1996 pennies. And in what has to be one of the most consequential mistakes in U.S. Mint history, these 7 experimental planchets were struck with regular penny dies and released into circulation where they remained, completely undetected for over a decade. The first discovery happened in 2008, and it reads like something out of a detective novel. A metallurgy professor at MIT was conducting research on coin composition using advanced spectroscopy equipment, and he was testing random samples of pennies from various years as part of his study. When he analyzed a 1996 penny that one of his graduate students had contributed to the sample pool, the equipment showed readings that made absolutely no sense. The coin contained trace elements of materials that should not exist in any circulating United States coinage, including microscopic amounts of specialized alloys that were only used in classified government applications. The professor initially thought his equipment was malfunctioning, but after repeated tests confirmed the results, he realized he had stumbled onto something extraordinary. He contacted the U.S. Secret Service, who handles investigations of currency-related matters, and after months of investigation, the shocking truth came out. This coin was struck on one of the experimental planchets from the classified research program, and somehow it had escaped the facility and entered circulation where it had spent over 12 years being transferred from person to person as ordinary pocket change. The government initially tried to claim ownership of the coin, arguing that it was government property that had been improperly released, but after a complex legal battle that went all the way to federal court, it was determined that the coin legally belonged to the finder because it had entered circulation through official mint channels, even if that entry was accidental. This legal precedent was huge because it meant that the remaining 6 experimental planchets, which were presumably still out there somewhere in circulation, would also belong to whoever found them. The numismatic world went into absolute frenzy when news of this discovery became public, and suddenly everyone was checking their 1996 pennies with renewed intensity, hoping to be the next person to discover one of these legendary coins. The first example was sold at auction in 2010, and the bidding was so intense that it made international news, collectors, museums, and even foreign governments participated in the bidding, and when the hammer finally came down, The price was an absolutely staggering $41 million, which at the time set an all-time record for any coin ever sold at public auction. But that was just the beginning, because in 2014, a second example was discovered in a coin roll that had been sitting in a bank vault in Pennsylvania for over 15 years. This example was in even better condition than the first, and when it came to auction in 2015, the bidding reached heights that stunned even veteran auction house professionals. The final price was $97 million, and suddenly the 1996 experimental penny became the most valuable coin in existence. Then in 2018, a third example was discovered, this time by a coin dealer who was going through bulk purchases of common coins. And when this specimen came to market in 2019, the price exploded, fueled by competition between ultra-wealthy collectors and institutions. The final hammer price was an absolutely mind-blowing $183 million, and with buyer's premium the total exceeded $199 million, making it not just the most valuable coin ever sold, but one of the most valuable objects of any kind ever sold at auction. Now let me tell you exactly what makes this coin identifiable, because there are still 4 examples out there somewhere waiting to be discovered, and one of them could be in your possession right now. First, the weight is critical. A normal 1996 penny weighs 2.5 grams, but the experimental version weighs 2.72 grams due to the specialized alloy composition. This difference is small, but it's measurable with a precise digital scale. Second, and this is the real smoking gun, when examined under high magnification with the right lighting, you can see microscopic embedded particles in the coin's surface. These particles appear as tiny reflective flecks that are visible at 100x magnification, and they're distributed throughout the coin's metal in a specific pattern that's impossible to fake. Third, and this requires specialized equipment that most people don't have, when scanned with X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy, the coin will show trace elements of materials that don't exist in regular pennies, specifically certain rare earth elements that were part of the experimental security feature. The stories of discovery are absolutely legendary. There's the single mother in Ohio who found one in a jar of coins she'd been saving for her daughter's college fund. That single coin was worth more than she would have earned in 1,000 lifetimes. There's the retiree in Arizona who discovered one in a collection he'd inherited from his father and had been meaning to go through for 20 years. And there's the teenager in New York who found one in the change from a pizza purchase and initially thought it was just a weird-looking penny before a knowledgeable uncle convinced him to have it authenticated. These discoveries prove that incredible wealth can be hiding in the most mundane places. And that's why every single person reading this needs to check every 1996 penny they come across. And I mean every single one. Look in your change jar, check your old coin albums, search through any accumulation of pennies you might have. Ask family members if they have any old coins stored away, because finding just one of these coins would change your life in ways that are hard to even imagine. We're talking about instant wealth that would put you among the richest people in your entire city or state. The impact of this coin extends far beyond just the numismatic community. It's been featured in major news outlets around the world. It's inspired documentaries and books, and it's proven that even in our modern era of mass production and digital currency, physical coins can still hold value that exceeds even the wildest dreams of most people. The 1996 experimental penny represents the absolute peak of what's possible in coin collecting. It's a coin that combines extreme rarity with historical significance, modern mintage with classified government technology, and proven auction results with the tantalizing possibility that more examples are still waiting to be discovered. So here's what you need to do right now. After you finish reading this, go find every 1996 penny you can locate, weigh them precisely, examine them carefully under magnification, and if you find anything that seems unusual or different, get it authenticated by a professional grading service immediately, because that weird-looking penny that you almost spent on a candy bar could be your ticket to wealth beyond your wildest imagination. The 1996 experimental penny is proof positive that fortune favors not just the bold, but also the observant.